Have you ever found yourself in a situation where everything felt like a series of bizarre coincidences, leading you to a shocking revelation that you never saw coming? Imagine this: you're just an ordinary person, living your normal life, when suddenly, you're pulled into a world that feels so out of place, so foreign, and yet, it's somehow yours. What if I told you that someone like you could end up inheriting a mansion full of secrets, mystery, and untold riches, without ever expecting it, simply by being in the right, or wrong, place at the right time? This is exactly what happened to a young woman named Claire, and trust me, you won't believe how her life changed overnight. Claire was just an average woman, struggling to make ends meet, juggling her full-time job while trying to stay afloat in a world that constantly seemed to demand more from her than she could give. Like many of us, she wasn't living a lavish lifestyle. No glamorous vacations, no luxury shopping sprees, no fancy dinner parties. Instead, she spent her days working long hours at a cafe, serving coffee to people who never really noticed her. The dream of one day living in a grand mansion, of having her own space to breathe and enjoy, seemed so far out of reach. It was almost laughable, a fairy tale that didn't belong in her reality. But life, as we all know, has a funny way of throwing us curveballs when we least expect them. It all started on an ordinary Wednesday morning. Claire was on her usual route to work when she received an unexpected phone call. The voice on the other end of the line was calm, professional, and utterly mysterious. It was a lawyer calling to inform her that she had just been named the sole beneficiary of a vast estate. The catch? She had to clean it. It sounded ridiculous, right? I mean, who would be asked to clean a mansion as part of receiving an inheritance? It didn't make sense. But the more the lawyer spoke, the more intrigued Claire became. What started as a bizarre request quickly turned into something that would change her life forever. Now, think about it for a second. You've been living paycheck to paycheck, barely keeping your head above water, and suddenly, someone tells you that you've inherited a mansion. It sounds like a dream, doesn't it? But wait, what's the catch? You have to clean the whole thing. It's strange, right? At first, Claire thought it was a prank. Maybe it was one of her friends pulling her leg, or a strange glitch in the system. But the lawyer was adamant. There was paperwork to sign, legalities to follow, and before long, Claire found herself standing at the gates of the grandest mansion she had ever laid eyes on. You might be wondering, why would anyone be asked to clean a mansion just to claim their inheritance? And that's where the mystery begins. You see, this wasn't just any mansion. It wasn't just some forgotten, crumbling estate out in the middle of nowhere. No, this place was a living, breathing entity of its own. A mansion full of history, a mansion that held secrets so deeply embedded in its walls that they could only be uncovered by someone with the right heart, the right intentions. Someone who wasn't afraid to get their hands dirty, someone like Claire. But let me stop right here for a moment. What do you think Claire felt when she first walked into that mansion? I mean, how would you feel if you were suddenly thrust into a situation like that? Walking into a place that looked like it belonged in a movie, a place where every inch of the floor and every piece of furniture seemed to have its own story to tell? Would you be excited? Anxious? Confused? Or maybe you'd feel a strange sense of awe, mixed with a little bit of fear. Claire, at first, was all of those things. She wasn't sure what she had gotten herself into, but she knew she had no choice but to dive in head first. As Claire began her task of cleaning the mansion, she quickly realized that this wasn't going to be a simple housekeeping job. The house was massive, and each room seemed to have its own unique personality, from the grand ballroom with its glittering chandeliers to the dusty library filled with old leather-bound books. The place was beautiful, but there was an air of mystery that she couldn't shake. Everywhere she turned, it felt like someone was watching her, waiting for her to discover something. And then, when she least expected it, Claire stumbled upon something hidden deep within the mansion's many rooms that would change everything. But I'm not going to tell you what she found just yet. Because, like Claire, you'll have to wait until the pieces of this puzzle start to fall into place. What Claire uncovered that day in the mansion would reveal the truth about her inheritance, a truth so astonishing, so unbelievable, that it left her speechless. But even more shocking than what she discovered was the realization that she wasn't the first one to uncover these secrets. There were others who came before her, people who had been trying to solve this mystery for years, but failed to do so. And now, it was her turn. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's rewind a bit and take a closer look at what Claire was really up against. The mansion wasn't just a home, it was a labyrinth of secrets and hidden clues. And as she began to clean, those secrets slowly started to unravel. There was a particular room, a room that seemed to be locked for years, its key lost to time. But Claire, being the determined woman she was, wasn't about to let that stop her. She wasn't just cleaning, she was uncovering history, unlocking a past that had been buried for generations. Now, before I dive any deeper into this story, let me ask you something. Are you ready for the big twist? The moment when everything shifts and Claire's entire world is turned upside down? Because trust me, it's coming, and when it does, you won't be able to look away. You'll be on the edge of your seat, desperate to know what happens next. So stick with me, stay tuned, and let's uncover this mystery together. You're going to want to see how this story unfolds. I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll be asking yourself, how did I not see that coming? Because what Claire discovers is far more than just an inheritance. It's a revelation that will not only change her life, but it will make you question everything you think you know about fate, destiny, and the unexpected twists life can throw your way. And just when you think the mystery is over, just when you think you have it all figured out, another secret will come to light, one that will leave you questioning if the mansion ever truly wanted Claire to uncover its truths. What does it want from her? What is it really hiding? Stay with me till the end, and I'll reveal all the shocking details that will leave you gasping in disbelief. You won't want to miss a single moment of this incredible journey. Claire had always been the kind of person who found herself stuck in the middle of things. Not just figuratively, but literally. Life had a way of pulling her in all sorts of directions, and she, much like many of us, was simply trying to hold it all together. Just a few months before the phone call that changed everything, Claire had been going through what felt like a string of unlucky events. Her job at the cafe was exhausting, and the tips were barely enough to cover rent each month. She had no romantic partner to lean on, no close-knit family around to offer support, and her friends, while well-meaning, were just as lost in the grind of their own lives. Claire had come to terms with the fact that she would always be just scraping by, never quite reaching that elusive better life she had imagined as a kid. But, of course, things rarely work out the way we expect. A few weeks before the call, Claire had overheard a conversation between her co-worker, Jenna, and an older man who came into the cafe every morning for his coffee. He was a quiet, reserved man, someone who never seemed to say much, always sitting in the same corner, sipping his drink slowly as he flipped through the local newspaper. He was a regular, the kind of person you notice, but never really get to know. But that morning, something in his expression had shifted. He had been talking about a family matter, about settling affairs and securing the future. It sounded like some vague conversation, but for some reason, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that the words held more meaning than she could understand at the time. She didn't think much of it, though. After all, people had their own problems, right? Why would someone like her, with so little in the world, be swept into anything that had to do with wealth or family drama? She let it go. The universe, however, had its own plan. After that odd encounter, Claire began noticing strange occurrences around her. First, it was the random letters that started arriving at her apartment. They were unopened envelopes addressed in formal, meticulous handwriting, but they were never for her. At least, that's what she thought at first. They were all addressed to someone named Claire Harris, but with an extra name attached, the beneficiary. It sounded official, yet she never gave the letters much attention, chalking it up to some sort of mix-up. She didn't even bother to open the first few. Who had time for legal paperwork when you're just trying to make it through another day of work? But curiosity got the better of her, and one rainy afternoon, when she found herself with a rare moment of downtime, Claire opened one of the letters. The contents were as cryptic as they were compelling. It was a letter from a law firm she'd never heard of, written in a formal tone that suggested something incredibly serious was at stake. The letter spoke of an inheritance, one that had been set aside for her, though it was unclear from the words why or how this had happened. It mentioned her late uncle, an uncle she had never even met, let alone knew existed. And it was his estate, his mansion, that she was now being asked to claim. But there was a stipulation, buried deep within the formal language. To inherit the estate, she must first perform the task of cleansing the property, as described in the original will. At first, it seemed like a mistake. Perhaps this was some bizarre error or even a scam. The idea that someone like Claire could inherit such wealth felt impossible. Yet the document was stamped with the law firm's seal, and all the details matched her name and identity. The mansion was real, and so was the inheritance. Still skeptical, but intrigued, Claire decided to look into it. The more she dug, the more she uncovered a tangled web of mysteries that didn't seem to add up. The lawyer's office was all too eager to answer her questions, perhaps too eager. She began to feel like she was walking into something far bigger than she could understand. Why her? Why this mansion? And why had her late uncle, a man she knew nothing about, left this entire legacy to someone he had never even met? Every piece of the puzzle seemed to raise more questions than answers, but Claire wasn't about to let it all slip through her fingers. The mansion, she thought, could hold the key to something greater than just money. Maybe it held answers to the questions she'd been asking her whole life. Maybe this was her chance to finally break free from the life of mediocrity she had been stuck in for so long. So, Claire agreed to the lawyer's terms. She packed a small bag, told her co-workers she needed a few days off, and made her way to the estate. And that's when the strange events truly began. As she approached the gates of the mansion for the first time, she couldn't help but feel a chill run down her spine. The house loomed in the distance, its grand stone walls rising up from the misty hills, almost like something out of a Gothic novel. Everything about the place was overwhelming, from the size to the eerie silence that surrounded it. No caretakers, no maintenance crew, just her and the mansion, as if the world had forgotten it existed. Yet, as she made her way inside, the feeling of being watched was impossible to ignore. The first day of cleaning was ordinary enough. She dusted the high ceilings, swept the grand staircase, and polished the antique furniture that filled the rooms. But the deeper Claire went into the house, the more things began to feel off. There were strange symbols carved into the door frames of some of the rooms, ancient-looking bookshelves filled with unreadable texts, and unsettling paintings of people she didn't recognize. The house wasn't just old, it felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for something. Claire tried to shake off the feeling, chalking it up to nerves. After all, who wouldn't be intimidated by a mansion this size? But the more time she spent there, the more she couldn't ignore the unsettling presence that seemed to haunt the halls. Then came the second letter. This one was different. It was shorter, with a single line of text that sent a cold shiver down Claire's spine. There are eyes watching you. Trust no one. No signature. No return address. It was as if the mansion itself was warning her. What did it mean? Who was watching her? And why was she receiving these strange messages? Could it have been the lawyer, trying to pressure her into something she wasn't seeing? Or perhaps someone else, someone with ties to the mansion's past, had caught wind of her inheritance. Claire couldn't shake the feeling that she was stepping into a situation far more dangerous than she realized. Every decision seemed to take her deeper into a mystery she wasn't prepared for, a puzzle she couldn't solve. But just as she was about to dismiss her fears and get back to cleaning, Claire stumbled upon a hidden door in the library, a door that had been carefully concealed behind an old bookshelf. Her heart raced as she pushed the books aside, revealing the entrance to what looked like a long-forgotten hallway. The air was musty, and the darkness seemed to swallow the light as she entered. She had no idea what was at the end of that hallway, but one thing was clear: Claire was no longer just cleaning the mansion. She was uncovering its deepest secrets, secrets that would reveal the true reason why she had been brought here. And with every step, she could feel the weight of the house's history bearing down on her, waiting to finally reveal what she had been unknowingly drawn to. Stay with me. The truth is about to come out. As Claire ventured deeper into the mansion, she couldn't ignore the growing sense of unease that had settled in her chest. Each step she took seemed to echo louder than the last, and the once grandiose rooms now felt more like the chambers of a haunted past. The deeper she went into the mansion, the more she started to feel like an intruder, like she wasn't supposed to be there, like something or someone was trying to stop her. But what? The strange letters, the hidden hallway, and the cryptic warning had all set her on a path that she couldn't turn away from. She needed to know the truth, no matter the cost. Yet, with every piece of evidence she uncovered, the more it seemed like someone, or something, was always one step ahead of her. The most unsettling moment came one night when Claire was combing through an old chest she'd found in one of the forgotten bedrooms. The chest was covered in dust, and it seemed like it had never been touched in years. But when Claire opened it, her heart skipped a beat. Inside were old photographs, letters, and journals, pieces of the mansion's forgotten history, things that might finally piece together the puzzle she had been trying to solve. As she sifted through the contents, one letter caught her eye. It was dated decades ago, but the name on it struck her like a punch to the gut. It was from her uncle, the man who had left her the inheritance. The letter was addressed to a woman Claire didn't recognize, someone named Isabel. The words were hard to make out at first, faded and smudged with age, but the few legible lines were enough to make Claire freeze in her tracks. "I will never forgive you for what you did. This house will never forget. The truth will come to light when the time is right." Claire's hands trembled as she held the letter. What did it mean? What had her uncle been involved in? And why had this letter been hidden away for so long? She felt a sense of urgency rise within her. This wasn't just about cleaning a mansion anymore. It was about uncovering something far more dangerous, something her uncle had left behind, buried deep within the house's history. Just as she was about to dig deeper into the chest, a sudden noise from the hallway startled her. The door to the room creaked open slowly, and there, standing in the doorway, was someone Claire hadn't expected to see. It was the lawyer, the one who had initially contacted her about the inheritance. His name was Mr. Dawson, and he had a look of concern on his face that didn't match the professional demeanor he had maintained during their previous conversations. "I think you've gone far enough," he said, his voice low and measured, almost too calm. "There's nothing more for you to uncover here." His words sent a chill through Claire's spine. Was this a warning? Or a threat? For a moment, Claire just stood there, unsure of how to react. She had trusted him. He was the one who had guided her to this mansion, the one who had assured her that everything was legal and above board. But now, standing before her with that strange, almost predatory look in his eyes, Claire couldn't help but wonder if he was hiding something. Had he known more about her inheritance than he had let on? Had he been watching her this entire time, waiting for her to find the truth? She took a step back, holding the letter close to her chest as if it were the only thing keeping her grounded. "What do you mean, gone far enough? I'm just cleaning this place, like you said. Nothing more." Mr. Dawson didn't move, his gaze fixed on her with unnerving intensity. "This house has a way of revealing things that are better left forgotten," he said quietly, almost as if he were speaking to himself. "You're not prepared for what you're about to find. Some secrets are meant to stay buried. You should leave before it's too late." The warning hung in the air like a dark cloud, and Claire felt a cold shiver run down her spine. What was he implying? What had her uncle been involved in all those years ago? And why did Mr. Dawson seem so desperate to keep her from uncovering the truth? Claire stood her ground, not letting the lawyer intimidate her. "I'm not leaving," she said firmly, her voice shaking with a mixture of fear and determination. "I'm not afraid of whatever this is. I have a right to know what's hidden here." But the lawyer only nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "Very well," he said. "But you've been warned. There are forces at play here that you don't understand. Don't say I didn't warn you." He turned and walked out of the room, leaving Claire standing there, more confused than ever. What was he talking about? And who was this Isabel? Was she the person her uncle had been angry with? Claire's mind raced as she glanced at the chest of hidden memories in front of her. She couldn't just walk away now, not when she was so close. But as she turned back to the chest, she froze. The letter, the one from her uncle, was gone. It had vanished, as if it had never been there in the first place. Claire's heart pounded in her chest. She had seen it with her own eyes, held it in her hands just moments ago. But now, it was nowhere to be found. Panic set in. Had someone taken it? Was someone else searching the mansion, following her every move? It was too much to be a coincidence. Claire knew something wasn't right, but who could she trust? Could the lawyer be behind this? Or was there someone else in the mansion, someone who had been quietly observing her from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike? Determined not to give up, Claire decided to search the mansion one more time. She checked the library, the old study, the hidden hallway she'd found earlier, but nothing. It was as if the house itself was playing games with her, keeping the secrets just out of reach. Every door she opened, every room she explored, seemed to be a dead end, leading her in circles. The deeper she dug, the more the mansion seemed to close in on her, as if it were pushing her away, warning her to stop. But Claire couldn't stop now. The truth was out there, and she was going to find it, no matter what it took. But just as she was about to give up for the night, she noticed something odd, a faint glimmer of light from the attic window. It wasn't much, just a small sliver of light that seemed to be coming from a place she hadn't explored yet. She hesitated, but then something inside her told her she had to go. She had to see what was in the attic, because whatever it was, she knew it was the last piece of the puzzle. With her heart pounding in her chest, Claire made her way up the creaky staircase, the hairs on the back of her neck standing on end as she reached the attic door. But when she opened it, she was greeted by an unexpected sight, a sight that made her blood run cold. The room was filled with old furniture and forgotten belongings, but at the center of the room, there was something else. A mirror. It was tall, ornate, and framed in dark, carved wood. But it wasn't the mirror itself that made Claire's breath catch in her throat. It was the figure standing in it. A figure that wasn't supposed to be there. Claire stepped back, her heart racing. Who or what was that? And why were they staring back at her, as if they had been waiting for her all along? Stay tuned. The real mystery is about to unfold, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Claire's hand hovered just above the mirror, the reflection staring back at her with an eerie calmness, as though it were waiting for something or someone to make the next move. The figure in the glass was blurry at first, but as Claire stepped closer, she realized it wasn't a trick of the light. There, in the reflection, stood a woman, her features obscured by shadows, her posture still and unnervingly familiar. It was as if this woman had been watching Claire for a long time, waiting for the right moment to reveal herself. But before Claire could make sense of what was happening, a soft knock echoed from the door behind her, sharp enough to snap her back into reality. She spun around, but there was no one there. The silence returned, thick and oppressive, almost suffocating. With a trembling hand, Claire closed the attic door behind her, the eerie mirror still fresh in her mind. Her mind was racing, trying to make sense of the impossible. The figure in the reflection had seemed so real, almost like a warning, and yet there was no one there when she turned. She tried to shake it off, telling herself it was just the house playing tricks on her, but the feeling lingered. It wasn't just the house that felt off, it was everything. The mansion had a life of its own, and Claire was nothing more than a guest in its twisted story. As if that weren't enough, her phone buzzed in her pocket, the sudden sound jolting her out of her thoughts. She pulled it out and saw a text message from her estranged brother, Aaron. He rarely reached out to her these days, and when he did, it was usually about something trivial. But this message was different. It was short, cryptic, and chilling. Claire, don't trust anyone. I know you think this inheritance is your escape, but it's a trap. They're watching you. I just got a call from the lawyer. They want me to come to the mansion. You're not alone in this. Don't let your guard down. Claire's heart skipped a beat. Aaron? What did he mean? She hadn't spoken to him in months, and now he was sending her this urgent message, telling her not to trust anyone. What was going on? The lawyer, Mr. Dawson, had been the one who had orchestrated this whole thing in the first place. But now, Aaron was claiming something different. It felt like the walls were closing in on her from all sides. How had Aaron even known what was happening at the mansion? What was his connection to all this? There were so many questions, and now, with every answer Claire uncovered, more mysteries seemed to arise, complicating everything further. She paced the room, her mind racing, the text message burning in her hands. What had her brother meant by the trap? And why had he been contacted by the lawyer, too? She had no idea what to believe anymore. There was too much to piece together. The inheritance, her uncle's mysterious past, the strange messages, and now her brother's cryptic warning, it was all coming to a head. She needed to talk to Aaron, to get answers, but she had no idea where to even start. The thought of confronting him, of diving deeper into whatever this was, made her stomach churn. But at the same time, Claire felt a strange pull to move forward, to discover the truth, even if it meant risking everything. But just as she was about to text her brother back, another notification popped up, this time, an email. It was from the lawyer, Mr. Dawson. The subject line read, "Final notice, urgent action required." Claire's breath caught in her throat as she clicked open the message. What now? The email was brief and cold, stating that the mansion had been under review for a long time, and that Claire's inheritance was at risk if she didn't comply with the terms laid out in the original will. It was vague, but the language felt threatening, as if Claire's every move was being watched. The lawyer reminded her once again of the importance of cleansing the estate and warned that further delay would result in legal action. The tone was much more urgent than before, and something about it felt off. She reread the email 3 times, each time finding new inconsistencies in the wording. What did he mean by review? Why was he suddenly so insistent on her following through with the will's terms? Claire had already done everything he had asked. She had cleaned, she had prepared the house, and now he was demanding even more. The more she thought about it, the more Claire started to wonder if this whole thing was a setup, a carefully orchestrated scheme to manipulate her into doing something she didn't understand. And who else could be involved in this deception? At that moment, her phone rang, jolting her from her thoughts. The caller ID read unknown. Hesitant but curious, Claire answered. "Hello," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, still shaken from the messages and everything that had happened so far. The voice on the other end was unfamiliar, but its tone was unmistakably sharp and commanding. "Claire," the voice said, "I suggest you stop digging into things that don't concern you. You have no idea what you're dealing with, and trust me, you don't want to find out. Leave the mansion. Leave the inheritance. Leave everything behind before it's too late. This is your final warning." The call abruptly ended. Claire's mind was racing, her pulse pounding in her ears. The voice was unmistakably authoritative, and yet there was no way she could tell who it was. Was it Mr. Dawson? Had someone else been tracking her every move? The sheer audacity of it all made Claire feel like she was losing control. Her brother's warning, the lawyer's threats, and now this cryptic phone call, all of it seemed connected. But how? Who was behind this? And more importantly, why were they trying to stop her from uncovering the truth? With the weight of everything pressing down on her, Claire made a decision. She wasn't going to back down. She couldn't. Not now. But just as she resolved to confront whatever was lurking in the mansion's shadows, she received a final, chilling notification, a new email, this time from an address she didn't recognize. The subject line was simple: "We know what you found." Her hands shook as she clicked it open. Inside was a single line of text: "You think you're the first to try to uncover the secrets of this house? You're not. And you won't be the last." Claire's heart skipped a beat. Someone had already been here before her, someone who had tried to dig into the mansion's history and failed. But who were they? What had they discovered? And why was the house, the inheritance, so important that someone had been willing to go to these lengths to keep her from finding the truth? She needed answers. But with every clue, every warning, every secret she uncovered, Claire was beginning to realize that the more she learned, the less she truly understood. The mansion wasn't just a house, it was a labyrinth of deception, and the deeper she went, the more she began to question who was really in control. Was it the house? Was it Mr. Dawson? Or was there someone else, someone far more dangerous, pulling the strings? Stay tuned, because the real mystery is just beginning, and the twists are only getting started. You won't want to miss what happens next. The next morning, Claire woke up to the sound of the wind howling through the cracks in the old mansion, an eerie reminder that the house seemed to have a life of its own. Her heart was still racing from the phone call the night before, and every part of her body felt on edge. She hadn't slept much, the feeling of being watched still fresh in her mind. It was as though every corner of the mansion was closing in on her, whispering secrets she wasn't meant to know. But what terrified her more than the haunting atmosphere of the house was the overwhelming sense that she wasn't alone. Someone was here. Someone was watching her. And she had no idea who they were. She spent the morning pacing the grand hallway, her mind a whirl of confusion and fear. Every creak of the floorboards seemed amplified, every shadow in the corner of her eye felt like a person lurking just out of sight. Her phone buzzed again, But this time it wasn't an anonymous email or a cryptic text. It was a call from Aaron, her brother. Claire's heart leapt at the sight of his name on the screen, and for a split second, she thought maybe, just maybe, things were starting to make sense. Maybe Aaron knew what was going on, maybe he could help her untangle the mess she had found herself in. But when she answered, there was only silence on the other end of the line. She waited, but still nothing. The seconds stretched into minutes, and just when she was about to hang up, she heard a faint, almost imperceptible sound. A rustling. Then, a voice, barely a whisper. "Claire, don't trust anyone." The call abruptly cut off, leaving her standing there, stunned. Her fingers trembled as she held the phone to her ear, as though the connection could somehow pull her back into whatever nightmare was unfolding. But there was nothing more. The line was dead. It wasn't like Aaron to go quiet, especially when she needed him the most. Panic started to crawl up her spine. What had just happened? Why was he reaching out like this? And why hadn't he said more? The urgency of it all pressed down on her, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she was running out of time. She immediately called him back, but the phone rang and rang with no answer. The silence gnawed at her. Had something happened to him? Was he in danger, too? She didn't know, but the sinking feeling in her stomach told her that whatever was going on, it was worse than she could have imagined. Something dark was moving around them, something more sinister than just a mansion full of secrets. Claire decided to leave the mansion, even if just for a short while, to try and calm her mind and figure out her next steps. She grabbed her coat, bolted the front door behind her, and headed to the car. But as she approached the driveway, she froze. Her car was gone. She scanned the area, hoping it was just her nerves playing tricks on her. Maybe she had parked it somewhere else, maybe she was just too tired to remember. But no, it was gone. And then she saw it, the dark figure across the street, standing motionless by the trees. A tall, shadowy silhouette. It wasn't the first time she'd thought she'd seen someone watching from a distance, but this time, there was no mistaking it. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, its presence as ominous as the house itself. A cold shiver ran down Claire's spine. She didn't know if the figure was a person or just another trick of the mind, but something in her gut told her it was real. Someone was here. Someone was following her. And they were getting closer. She rushed back inside the mansion, locking the door behind her. Her pulse hammered in her ears. It was no longer a feeling of paranoia, it was a certainty. Whoever had been watching her before, whoever had been leaving the cryptic messages, they were here, right now, and they knew exactly where she was. She felt trapped, cornered, unsure of who to trust, unsure of who to turn to. Every decision she had made up to this point had led her deeper into a maze she couldn't escape. Her mind raced, thoughts flashing from one possibility to the next. Could it have been the lawyer? Mr. Dawson had been so insistent, so controlling from the start. Or could it be someone from her uncle's past? But no matter who she suspected, there was always one nagging question that she couldn't shake. What did they want? What was the secret they were all trying to protect? And why was it so important that she didn't uncover it? Claire sat on the edge of the couch, running her fingers through her hair as she tried to piece it together. The more she thought about it, the more she realized she was in way over her head. This wasn't about money or an inheritance anymore. This was about something much bigger, something much darker. Suddenly, the phone rang again. This time, it was a local number. Claire hesitated, fear creeping into her chest, but she answered anyway. "Hello," she said, her voice strained, trying to keep the tremble out of her tone. The voice on the other end was deep, almost mechanical, like it was coming through a distorted line. "Leave now," the voice commanded, harsh and cold. "If you don't, you're next. You have no idea who you're dealing with. You think the mansion is just a house, but it's more than that. It's a prison. And you're trapped." Before she could respond, the line went dead. Claire's breath caught in her throat. The message was clear. They knew where she was, they knew she had been snooping around, and now they were threatening her. The air in the room seemed to thicken, suffocating her with the weight of what was happening. She had no choice but to face the fact that whatever her uncle had left behind in that house, it was dangerous. And the closer she got to uncovering the truth, the more she realized that no one around her was safe. Not even Aaron. Especially not Aaron. Claire stumbled backward, her heart pounding in her chest. The thought that someone could be so close to her, could be watching her every move, made her feel more vulnerable than ever. She felt exposed, isolated in a way she never had before. But before she could gather her thoughts, there was a sudden noise from upstairs. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but there was no mistaking it. Someone was in the house. Someone had broken in. Claire's blood ran cold. The door to the attic creaked open slowly, as if inviting her to confront whatever had been waiting for her. With no more time to waste, Claire made a split-second decision. She couldn't stay in the house any longer. But the question was, could she even leave? The mansion had a hold on her now, and no matter how far she ran, she didn't think she'd escape the web of secrets closing in around her. Every corner, every shadow, every whisper was part of something bigger than she could understand. And whoever was following her, whoever was behind this twisted game, they were always one step ahead. Her breath quickened as she sprinted toward the front door. But when she reached it, she stopped. The door was wide open. She hadn't opened it. Someone else had. Someone was waiting for her to make her next move. The darkness was closing in. And Claire realized, too late, that she had no way out. As Claire stood frozen in the doorway, her mind whirling in panic, the room seemed to close in around her. Her thoughts were a blur of confusion and fear, the phone calls, the warnings, the cryptic messages that had been driving her mad for days. It was all too much. The shadows in the mansion, the feeling of being followed, the sudden disappearances, and the mysterious, threatening voice on the phone, it all seemed to lead her in circles, as though she was trapped in a game she didn't understand. But now, with the door wide open and the sound of footsteps echoing from upstairs, something in her gut told her that the situation was far worse than she could have imagined. For a moment, she considered running. But where would she go? The mansion had already swallowed her whole, and every corner seemed to be hiding something sinister. It was as if the very house itself had conspired to trap her here. Claire took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She couldn't let fear control her, not now, not when she was so close to uncovering the truth. But before she could make a move, she heard the voice she'd been dreading. Claire's heart leapt at the sight of his name on the screen, and for a split second, she thought maybe, just maybe, things were starting to make sense. Maybe Aaron knew what was going on, maybe he could help her untangle the mess she had found herself in. But when she answered, there was only silence on the other end of the line. She waited, but still nothing. The seconds stretched into minutes, and just when she was about to hang up, she heard a faint, almost imperceptible sound. A rustling. Then, a voice, barely a whisper. "Claire, don't trust anyone." The call abruptly cut off, leaving her standing there, stunned. Her fingers trembled as she held the phone to her ear, as though the connection could somehow pull her back into whatever nightmare was unfolding. But there was nothing more. The line was dead. It wasn't like Aaron to go quiet, especially when she needed him the most. Panic started to crawl up her spine. What had just happened? Why was he reaching out like this? And why hadn't he said more? The urgency of it all pressed down on her, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she was running out of time. She immediately called him back, but the phone rang and rang with no answer. The silence gnawed at her. Had something happened to him? Was he in danger, too? She didn't know, but the sinking feeling in her stomach told her that whatever was going on, it was worse than she could have imagined. Something dark was moving around them, something more sinister than just a mansion full of secrets. Claire decided to leave the mansion, even if just for a short while, to try and calm her mind and figure out her next steps. She grabbed her coat, bolted the front door behind her, and headed to the car. But as she approached the driveway, she froze. Her car was gone. She scanned the area, hoping it was just her nerves playing tricks on her. Maybe she had parked it somewhere else, maybe she was just too tired to remember. But no, it was gone. And then she saw it, the dark figure across the street, standing motionless by the trees. A tall, shadowy silhouette. It wasn't the first time she'd thought she'd seen someone watching from a distance, but this time, there was no mistaking it. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, its presence as ominous as the house itself. A cold shiver ran down Claire's spine. She didn't know if the figure was a person or just another trick of the mind, but something in her gut told her it was real. Someone was here. Someone was following her. And they were getting closer. She rushed back inside the mansion, locking the door behind her. Her pulse hammered in her ears. It was no longer a feeling of paranoia, it was a certainty. Whoever had been watching her before, whoever had been leaving the cryptic messages, they were here, right now, and they knew exactly where she was. She felt trapped, cornered, unsure of who to trust, unsure of who to turn to. Every decision she had made up to this point had led her deeper into a maze she couldn't escape. Her mind raced, thoughts flashing from one possibility to the next. Could it have been the lawyer? Mr. Dawson had been so insistent, so controlling from the start. Or could it be someone from her uncle's past? But no matter who she suspected, there was always one nagging question that she couldn't shake. What did they want? What was the secret they were all trying to protect? And why was it so important that she didn't uncover it? Claire sat on the edge of the couch, running her fingers through her hair as she tried to piece it together. The more she thought about it, the more she realized she was in way over her head. This wasn't about money or an inheritance anymore. This was about something much bigger, something much darker. Suddenly, the phone rang again. This time, it was a local number. Claire hesitated, fear creeping into her chest, but she answered anyway. "Hello," she said, her voice strained, trying to keep the tremble out of her tone. The voice on the other end was deep, almost mechanical, like it was coming through a distorted line. "Leave now," the voice commanded, harsh and cold. "If you don't, you're next. You have no idea who you're dealing with. You think the mansion is just a house, but it's more than that. It's a prison. And you're trapped." Before she could respond, the line went dead. Claire's breath caught in her throat. The message was clear. They knew where she was, they knew she had been snooping around, and now they were threatening her. The air in the room seemed to thicken, suffocating her with the weight of what was happening. She had no choice but to face the fact that whatever her uncle had left behind in that house, it was dangerous. And the closer she got to uncovering the truth, the more she realized that no one around her was safe. Not even Aaron. Especially not Aaron. Claire stumbled backward, her heart pounding in her chest. The thought that someone could be so close to her, could be watching her every move, made her feel more vulnerable than ever. She felt exposed, isolated in a way she never had before. But before she could gather her thoughts, there was a sudden noise from upstairs. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but there was no mistaking it. Someone was in the house. Someone had broken in. Claire's blood ran cold. The door to the attic creaked open slowly, as if inviting her to confront whatever had been waiting for her. With no more time to waste, Claire made a split-second decision. She couldn't stay in the house any longer. But the question was, could she even leave? The mansion had a hold on her now, and no matter how far she ran, she didn't think she'd escape the web of secrets closing in around her. Every corner, every shadow, every whisper was part of something bigger than she could understand. And whoever was following her, whoever was behind this twisted game, they were always one step ahead. Her breath quickened as she sprinted toward the front door. But when she reached it, she stopped. The door was wide open. She hadn't opened it. Someone else had. Someone was waiting for her to make her next move. The darkness was closing in. And Claire realized, too late, that she had no way out. As Claire stood frozen in the doorway, her mind whirling in panic, the room seemed to close in around her. Her thoughts were a blur of confusion and fear, the phone calls, the warnings, the cryptic messages that had been driving her mad for days. It was all too much. The shadows in the mansion, the feeling of being followed, the sudden disappearances, and the mysterious, threatening voice on the phone, it all seemed to lead her in circles, as though she was trapped in a game she didn't understand. But now, with the door wide open and the sound of footsteps echoing from upstairs, something in her gut told her that the situation was far worse than she could have imagined. For a moment, she considered running. But where would she go? The mansion had already swallowed her whole, and every corner seemed to be hiding something sinister. It was as if the very house itself had conspired to trap her here. Claire took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She couldn't let fear control her, not now, not when she was so close to uncovering the truth. But before she could make a move, she heard the voice she'd been dreading. Claire, a voice called softly from behind her, a voice that made her freeze in her tracks. It was familiar, soothing even, and yet it sent a chill racing down her spine. It was Mr. Dawson, the lawyer. But the man standing in front of her now wasn't the same lawyer she had spoken to just days ago. His eyes were darker, colder, and his smile was unsettling in its familiarity. He wasn't just a stranger or a professional, no, this man had something more to him. Something Claire couldn't quite place, but she felt deep in her bones. "I thought you might be here," Mr. Dawson continued, his voice almost too calm for the situation. "I've been watching you, Claire. You're much smarter than I gave you credit for." His words hit Claire like a punch to the gut. Watching her? What did he mean by that? Why had he been following her? Suddenly, everything Claire thought she knew began to crumble. The mansion wasn't just a home her uncle had left behind. It wasn't about inheritance, it wasn't about money, or even the strange will her uncle had left behind. It was about something far darker. Mr. Dawson wasn't just a lawyer. He was playing a part in something much bigger, something far more dangerous. She had been a pawn all along, and the worst part was, she hadn't even realized it. A cold realization washed over Claire as the pieces started to fit together, but they didn't fit the way she expected. The emails, the messages, the cryptic calls, they weren't random. They were part of the plan. A plan that had been in motion long before she ever stepped foot in the mansion. And it wasn't her uncle who had set it all in motion. It was Mr. Dawson. "You're wondering why I've been so insistent, aren't you?" Mr. Dawson's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. "Why I've been pushing you to clean the house, to follow the will's instructions. But it wasn't about the house. It was about you, Claire. About your bloodline." Claire felt her legs weaken beneath her as the weight of his words sank in. Bloodline? What was he talking about? She had thought she was just a niece who'd been left a home, a burden, yes, but a home. But it turned out, her inheritance was only the beginning of something much more complicated. Mr. Dawson's eyes glinted with something darker now, something that made Claire's heart race. "You see," he continued, taking a step closer, "your uncle wasn't just a man with a fortune. He was part of something far older, far more dangerous. Something that's been waiting for you, Claire. Waiting for you to finally understand. The mansion, the inheritance, the mystery, it's all connected to you. Your family has been involved in a much darker legacy, and it's been kept from you for your own protection. But now, I'm afraid that protection is over." Claire's stomach dropped. She could feel the ground beneath her feet shift, the reality of the situation slipping through her fingers like sand. Every shred of security she thought she had was unraveling before her eyes. This wasn't just a mansion or an inheritance. This was a trap, one that had been laid out for her long before she ever set foot inside. But why? What was the purpose? What had her family been involved in, and why hadn't anyone told her? "Your uncle's will was never about passing on wealth," Dawson went on, his voice growing more sinister with each word. "It was about passing on responsibility. You were chosen, Claire. Chosen to take his place. To continue the legacy. You are the key to something much bigger, and if you're not careful, you'll end up just like him." Claire took a step back, her heart racing, her head spinning. Her thoughts were a whirlwind, but one thing was clear: the mansion, her uncle, the inheritance, even Mr. Dawson himself, it was all part of a much bigger, much darker plan that Claire had never seen coming. She wasn't here by chance. She had been brought here. The question was why, and what that meant for her future. Her uncle had known the truth. And now, Claire was left to carry the weight of it all. But what did she truly know? Was Mr. Dawson telling the truth? Or was he using her, manipulating her to play a role in something she didn't even understand? As Claire tried to process his words, the floor beneath her creaked again, and a figure emerged from the shadows, someone she hadn't expected. It was Aaron, her brother. He stepped into the light, his face unreadable, his eyes cold and distant. The air between them thickened as Claire's world tilted once again. Had he known about this all along? Had he been part of it? Or was he just another piece in this twisted puzzle? I'm sorry, Claire, Aaron said, his voice hollow. I didn't want to be the one to tell you, but you need to know. It's the only way you'll survive. Survive? Claire echoed, her voice trembling. What the hell is going on, Aaron? What have you gotten me into? Aaron looked at her with sorrow in his eyes, as if he had been forced into this position. You're not safe here. None of us are. They'll come for you. They'll come for us all, and you'll never see it coming. The truth hit Claire like a slap to the face. She had thought she was chasing the mystery, but the truth was that the mystery had been chasing her all along. And now, she realized that it wasn't just the mansion that was dangerous. It was everyone involved. Every person she had trusted. Her family. Mr. Dawson. Even Aaron. Everyone had been hiding something from her, and she was just beginning to scratch the surface. The mansion wasn't just a house. It was a trap. And Claire was caught in the middle of it all, with no way out. What had started as a search for answers had now become a fight for survival. And the worst part? She didn't know who to trust anymore. Every face, every name, every clue had been part of a twisted game that Claire was now unwillingly a part of. But who was really pulling the strings? Who was in control? And why had they chosen her? The darkness was only beginning to reveal itself, and Claire had no idea just how deep the rabbit hole went. Claire's heart was still racing as she stood there, reeling from the revelation that had just been thrust upon her. She had thought she was merely cleaning out a house, solving a small mystery about an inheritance left behind by an uncle she barely knew. But the truth had shattered that illusion completely. The mansion, the will, the strange messages, none of it had been random. It had all been leading her to this moment, to the realization that she was caught in the middle of something far darker than she could have ever imagined. As the shock began to wear off, her thoughts began to crystallize, and she knew, with terrifying certainty, that things were going to get even worse from here. There was no going back now. Aaron's presence in the room added to the suffocating tension, but it was his words that made her feel as though she had just been thrown into an ocean of uncertainty. He had been part of this. Maybe not in the same way as Dawson, but he had known more than he'd ever let on. And that thought twisted her insides with anger and confusion. How could he have kept such a monumental secret from her? From their entire family? She opened her mouth to confront him, to demand answers, but the words felt stuck in her throat. Her mind raced, scrambling to make sense of it all. Her brother, the person she had trusted above everyone else, had been hiding the truth all along. But why? What was his stake in this? Was he a victim too, or had he chosen to be a part of it? Aaron's gaze didn't meet hers, his eyes looking everywhere but at her. His hands were in his pockets, his posture stiff, his face pale as though he'd just witnessed something horrific. She could see it now, the guilt in the way he shifted his weight from foot to foot, the way he avoided her gaze. It was clear. He was hiding something. Something big. And if she didn't confront him now, if she didn't force the truth out of him, she'd never be able to move forward, never be able to piece together this nightmare that had consumed her life. I didn't want this for you, Claire, Aaron finally said, his voice low and strained. I never wanted you to get involved. But you were always going to find out. It was inevitable. His words hit her like a slap, each one echoing in her mind like a painful drumbeat. You don't understand what's at stake. It's not just about the mansion, or the inheritance. There's more going on here. Things you couldn't possibly comprehend. The frustration bubbling up inside Claire threatened to spill over. I don't understand. You mean like how you've been lying to me? How you've been keeping me in the dark, all while pretending everything was fine? The bitterness in her voice surprised her, but it was impossible to suppress. She had trusted Aaron, had believed him when he said everything would be okay. But now, everything felt like a lie. Why didn't you tell me? Why keep me out of this, if it's all so damn important? Aaron took a deep breath, his expression haunted. He finally looked at her, his eyes filled with something that looked like regret, but it wasn't enough. Nothing could erase the betrayal she felt. I was trying to protect you, Claire. I swear. I never wanted you to be a part of this twisted game. But now that you're here, there's no going back. His voice dropped to a whisper, barely audible over the rising tension. "They'll come for us, Claire. For both of us. And it won't be pretty." For a moment, she felt the air grow thicker, as though she were suffocating under the weight of his words. She could see the fear in his eyes, and it only made her more uncertain. Who was he afraid of? What had she gotten herself into? This wasn't about family anymore. This was about survival. And the worst part was, she didn't know who to trust. Just as the silence threatened to crush them both, the doorbell rang. It was sharp, jarring, pulling Claire out of her spiraling thoughts. She felt her heart jump in her chest as she exchanged a quick, uncertain glance with Aaron. Whoever was standing on the other side of that door wasn't someone she wanted to see. But when she opened it, the last person she expected to find was standing there, calm as ever. It was Dawson. The lawyer's eyes flicked between Claire and Aaron, his lips curled into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I think it's time we had a serious conversation, Claire," he said, his tone smooth and calculated. "Your brother has told you just enough to make you question everything. But he's keeping things from you. I think it's time we clear the air, don't you think?" Claire's chest tightened, and her mind screamed at her to close the door, to run, to do anything but let him in. But something about his presence, something about the way he was looking at her, made her hesitate. She could feel the weight of every decision pressing down on her, each choice offering a new layer of danger and uncertainty. She glanced at Aaron, hoping for a hint of reassurance, but there was none. He stood there, silent, as if waiting for her to decide, knowing all too well that there was no easy way out of this. Dawson's smile widened, sensing her hesitation. "You're at a crossroads, Claire. You always have been. You have two choices now. You can walk away from all of this, leave the mansion, leave your inheritance, leave whatever it is that binds you to this place. You'll be safe. You'll be free. No one will bother you again." He paused, letting the words settle. "Or, you can stay. You can accept your place in this. The mansion is more than just a house, Claire. It's a key. A key to something much larger. Something you're already a part of. And if you stay, you'll find out everything. But you'll also have to accept the consequences of that knowledge. There's no going back. Do you understand what I'm saying?" Her breath caught in her throat. The weight of his words pressed down on her like a physical force, suffocating her. Walk away. Stay. Both choices seemed impossible, both paths seemed fraught with danger. The more she thought about it, the more she realized there was no easy way out. If she stayed, she would have to confront everything she had feared, all the secrets she had uncovered, and whatever dangerous legacy had been passed down to her. But if she left, she would be abandoning the one thing that kept her tied to the truth. The one thing that could finally give her closure. A deep, gnawing fear took root in her chest as she realized that the stakes were far higher than she had ever imagined. This wasn't just about her uncle, or the mansion, or the inheritance. This was about power, control, and a legacy that Claire had no way of fully understanding. And as much as she wanted to run, to escape, she couldn't ignore the burning curiosity inside her, the need to uncover the truth, to see this twisted puzzle through to the end. But at what cost? Could she live with the choices she was about to make? Dawson stepped forward, his presence almost suffocating now, as if he were daring her to choose. "The decision is yours, Claire. But don't take too long. Time is running out." Claire's heart pounded in her chest, each beat deafening in her ears as she realized the truth. There was no safe option. There was only the decision to face whatever came next, or to run from it forever. Either way, there was no turning back. The air in the room seemed to crackle with tension as Claire stood frozen, Dawson's words echoing in her mind. "The decision is yours." The weight of those words threatened to suffocate her. No matter how she looked at it, no matter what choice she made, there was no escape. Dawson's presence in the doorway wasn't just a challenge, it was a declaration that everything she thought she knew was a lie. The mansion. Her inheritance. Her uncle's death. It was all part of something far bigger than her, and now, she was trapped in the eye of the storm. Aaron's silence beside her only made everything worse. The man she had trusted more than anyone else, her brother, had known all along, and yet he hadn't told her the full truth. Why? Was he too scared to admit his role, Or had he been a part of this conspiracy from the start? Claire's heart thudded painfully in her chest as she tried to make sense of the web she was caught in. What had started as an inheritance had turned into a nightmare. She couldn't trust anyone, not even Aaron. Dawson stepped forward again, closing the distance between them with an unsettling calmness. "You still don't get it, do you, Claire?" His voice was soft, almost pitying, but there was no kindness in his eyes. "It's not just about you. You're part of something far larger. Your uncle, the mansion, even your family, none of it matters unless you understand what's really at play. This isn't just about inheritance. It's about control. And you were always meant to be the one to take it all." Claire recoiled, the words hitting her harder than any blow could. "What are you talking about?" She could barely keep the panic from creeping into her voice. The room felt smaller, the walls pressing in around her. Every step Dawson took, every word he spoke, made her feel more suffocated, more powerless. Her stomach twisted as she started to piece together the horrible truth. Dawson's expression didn't shift. He wasn't just a lawyer. He wasn't just trying to claim control of the mansion, he was part of a much larger scheme. A system, a shadowy network that her uncle had been involved in, and now she was the latest pawn in that game. She wasn't inheriting a house. She wasn't receiving a simple bequest. She was being groomed for something far more dangerous. Something she couldn't even begin to comprehend. But as Dawson's words settled in, Claire's eyes snapped to Aaron. Something in his face had changed. The guarded look, the hint of guilt in his eyes, it wasn't fear. It was something worse. Something deeper. And in that moment, Claire knew. He had known this was coming. Aaron wasn't just a victim. He was part of it all. He'd been playing her all along. "Aaron," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, the shock lacing her words. She didn't even recognize her brother anymore. The man standing next to her was a stranger. "You knew, didn't you? You knew everything, and you let me walk right into this trap." Aaron flinched, and for the first time, his eyes met hers, filled with regret and something darker, resentment, maybe. But it was too late for apologies. Claire wasn't looking for excuses anymore. She was looking for the truth. The whole truth. "I didn't want this for you, Claire," Aaron finally said, but there was no conviction in his voice. "I swear, I didn't. But you're part of this now. You can't walk away. They'll never let you go. Not now. Not after everything." Claire felt her pulse quicken. Who? Who are they? What the hell have you been involved in?" Dawson's laugh was cold, mirthless. "Oh, she's finally catching on, Aaron. You've underestimated her, haven't you?" His eyes flicked back to Claire, and for the first time, there was a hint of something like amusement in his voice. "The they Aaron is talking about are the people who've been pulling the strings from the shadows. This mansion, your inheritance, it's just the beginning. This was always meant to lead to you. Your uncle was a part of this network, and now, so are you." Claire's breath caught in her throat. A network? She couldn't process it. She couldn't understand how everything she thought she knew about her family could have been a lie. But the pieces kept falling into place, and the more she tried to reject it, the clearer it became. This wasn't just about the mansion or her uncle's estate. This was about a web of power that stretched far beyond what she could see. And now, she was tangled in it. Before she could respond, Aaron's voice broke through the thick silence. "They're going to come for you, Claire. They know you're here. They've known since you stepped inside. And they won't stop until they get what they want." The words hit Claire like a freight train. Her mind raced, her body flooded with adrenaline. They had known. From the moment she had walked into the mansion, she had been marked. The realization was a punch to the gut. But before she could process it, Dawson was speaking again, his voice colder than ever. "It's not just about you, Claire. Your uncle wasn't just protecting a fortune. He was protecting something much more dangerous, something that's been passed down for generations. A secret, buried deep in this house, a power that cannot fall into the wrong hands. You're the only one who can decide what happens next. And you're running out of time." A shiver ran down Claire's spine. Time? What was he talking about? Her head spun as the weight of his words pressed down on her. She was caught in a storm of lies, threats, and deceit, and the stakes were higher than she had ever imagined. This wasn't just a family inheritance. This was about control of something far darker, something powerful, and if she didn't make the right choice now, there was no telling what would happen next. She looked at Aaron, desperate for any kind of guidance, but he just shook his head, his face pale. "I'm sorry, Claire. I never wanted this for you. But it's too late. You're in it now. And they're coming." It was then that the realization hit her like a brick. It wasn't just Dawson or Aaron she needed to worry about. The people behind them, the ones pulling the strings, were already in motion. And they wouldn't stop until they had what they wanted. Claire's blood ran cold as she realized how deep the conspiracy ran. She wasn't just fighting for her life. She was fighting against a shadowy force, a group that had infiltrated every aspect of her family's life. And now, she had to decide, fight back and risk everything, or run and hope she could escape the consequences. The fear in Aaron's eyes only confirmed what she already knew: there was no safe place. There was no escape. Only the cold, relentless pursuit of the truth and the power that came with it. With Dawson standing in front of her, and Aaron's betrayal hanging in the air, Claire realized that the time for choices had passed. The only thing left was survival. But at what cost? And who could she trust in this deadly game? The storm outside raged as Claire stood in the heart of the mansion, the place that had once felt like a sanctuary, now a prison. Her breath came in ragged gasps, the weight of everything crashing down on her like an avalanche. Dawson's cryptic words echoed in her mind, the fear and uncertainty churning in her gut. "You're part of this now. And you're running out of time." She couldn't escape it. She couldn't escape them. Not anymore. The truth had been buried for so long, but now it was clawing its way to the surface, threatening to suffocate her with its enormity. The people behind this, whoever they were, had been planning this for years, manipulating every step, every decision. And now, Claire was standing at the precipice of a life-altering decision that could change everything. Her pulse raced as she made her way to the study, the place where it had all started. She didn't know what she was looking for exactly, but the sense of urgency drove her forward. Every creak of the floorboards beneath her feet felt like a warning, like time was slipping through her fingers. She wasn't alone. She knew that. She hadn't been alone for a second since she'd set foot in this house. Her thoughts were interrupted as she reached the large oak desk at the center of the room, its surface cluttered with papers and books that seemed completely irrelevant until now. Her hand trembled as she sifted through the scattered items, flipping through the pages of a notebook that was half hidden beneath a pile of yellowing legal documents. The notebook was thick, its pages filled with cryptic notes, dates, names, and unfamiliar symbols. She felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand up as she turned the pages, each new entry more alarming than the last. The truth was right there, buried in the ink, and as her eyes skimmed over the words, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. Her uncle, her late uncle, the man whose death had set everything in motion, had known the truth all along. He had been a part of something dark, a part of an underground network with ties to people in high places. But the mansion was never meant to be a mere home. It was a symbol, a key to something larger. Something far more powerful. She stopped at one particular entry, the ink nearly faded, but still legible. The words hit her with the force of a sledgehammer. The last heir will awaken the legacy. They will unlock the vault, where power beyond imagination resides. The air seemed to evaporate from the room as Claire's mind raced. The vault. The legacy. It wasn't just about money. It was never about money. It was about control. Control over something hidden, something dangerous. And now, as the truth unfolded before her, she realized that her uncle hadn't been protecting her inheritance. He had been protecting the world from what was buried beneath the mansion. She had been chosen, not to inherit wealth, but to become a pawn in a much larger game. The final heir, the key to unlocking a power that had been buried for generations. A noise behind her startled her, and Claire whirled around, her heart pounding in her chest. Aaron stood in the doorway, his face pale, his eyes wide with fear. He had been keeping secrets from her, but in that moment, she saw something else in his eyes, something she hadn't noticed before. Desperation. It was clear now that he had been caught in this web, just as much as she had. He had never had a choice. He had been trapped too, a victim of the same forces that had controlled their family for years. "Claire, you have to leave," Aaron said, his voice trembling. "It's too late. You don't understand. You don't know what you're messing with." Claire took a step toward him, her voice cold. "What are you talking about? I know exactly what I'm messing with now. This was never about inheritance, was it? This was about power. And you have been a part of it all along." Aaron's face tightened, and for a moment, Claire saw the guilt flash across his features. But then something shifted, and his expression hardened. "You think you can just walk away from this? You think you have a choice in this, Claire? It's not that simple. It never was. They'll come for you. You'll never be safe again." His words struck her like a thunderclap, but Claire wasn't backing down. She couldn't afford to. The pieces were coming together, and she needed to face whatever this was head-on. "Who will come for me, Aaron? Who are they?" Before Aaron could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway, slow, deliberate, like the approach of a predator closing in on its prey. Claire's heart dropped into her stomach. She wasn't alone. Not anymore. The realization hit her with a rush of cold fear. They were here. Whoever they were, they had been watching her, following her every move. And now, it was time to confront them. Dawson's voice rang out from the hallway, calm, but filled with an unsettling authority. "It's over, Claire. There's no escaping now. You've uncovered what you shouldn't have. And you've made the mistake of thinking you're in control. But you're not." The walls seemed to close in as Dawson entered the room, flanked by two men in dark suits, their faces obscured. The air was thick with the tension of 1,000 unspoken threats. Claire's heart raced, but her resolve hardened. This wasn't just about her uncle's death anymore. It was about survival. The truth she had uncovered had led her here, but it was a truth that she couldn't walk away from. She had a choice, but it wasn't the kind of choice she had hoped for. "Everything you've learned," Dawson continued, "was never meant to be discovered. Your uncle played a role, but in the end, it's your turn. Your legacy, Claire. You were always going to be the one to unlock it. The one who would decide whether the world would fall into chaos, or whether it would remain hidden forever." Claire's breath caught in her throat as the weight of his words crashed down on her. She had thought she was uncovering her inheritance, but what she was truly uncovering was far more dangerous. A power that had been kept in check for generations, and now, it was hers to control. Or to destroy. It was all in her hands, whether she liked it or not. But just as Dawson stepped closer, the unexpected happened. A sharp crash came from the back of the house, followed by the sound of shuffling footsteps. Someone else was here. Someone who wasn't supposed to be. Claire's pulse quickened as the door behind her flew open. Standing there, silhouetted in the dim light, was someone she never expected to see again. Her uncle's old assistant, Maggie. Maggie, the woman who had worked by her uncle's side for years, the one who had disappeared right before his death. The one everyone had assumed was dead. "Dawson, you've been lying to her," Maggie's voice rang out, cold and filled with an edge of fury. "She's not your pawn. She's mine. And I'm taking her with me." In that moment, everything shattered. The truth Claire thought she understood was nothing but a smokescreen. Maggie had been pulling the strings all along. She had been waiting for this moment. And now, the game had truly begun. The room exploded with chaos as Claire's mind raced. Betrayals, lies, alliances, everything had been a carefully orchestrated plan. But now, as Maggie's eyes locked with hers, Claire realized she wasn't just fighting for her life. She was fighting for the world itself. And the most shocking truth of all? She might have been chosen to do more than just uncover the truth. She might have been chosen to protect it. The stakes had never been higher. The clock was ticking. And the battle for control of the legacy was only just beginning. The dust had barely settled in the aftermath of the confrontation. Claire stood at the edge of the mansion, her heart still racing, the weight of everything that had happened pressing heavily on her shoulders. The storm outside had finally died down, but the chaos inside had left a deeper storm in its wake. Maggie, the woman who had once been her uncle's trusted assistant, was gone now, disappeared into the night like a shadow, leaving only a trail of unanswered questions. The mansion was eerily silent, as though it, too, was taking a breath after the tension that had suffocated it for so long. The legacy, the power, the mystery, it was all finally laid bare, and yet, it felt like the end was just the beginning. Claire stood in the foyer, the grand chandelier above her flickering like a dying flame, casting long, distorted shadows across the marble floor. She hadn't expected it to end this way. She hadn't expected to lose so much of herself in the process. But now, with everything that had unfolded, she understood. Her uncle had never been just a man with wealth. He had been a keeper of secrets, a protector of something ancient, something powerful that was never meant to be discovered. And yet, here she was staring into the darkness that had haunted her family for generations. The mansion had been more than a home, it had been a prison. A place where the truth had been locked away until she, the unexpected heir, had stumbled upon it. But the question remained, why? Why her? Why had she been chosen to uncover the truth? As she turned, her gaze landed on Aaron, who stood by the front door, his face solemn, his eyes still filled with a mix of regret and something else, relief, maybe. He hadn't been entirely truthful with her, but in the end, he hadn't been the one to betray her. He had been trapped in the same web, just like Claire. "I never wanted you to get involved in all of this," he said quietly, his voice filled with remorse. "But now, I don't know what's next." His words hung in the air, thick with the uncertainty of what they had both just survived. Claire met his gaze, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she didn't feel the same overwhelming anger that had consumed her for so long. She had expected the betrayal to tear her apart, but in the end, it hadn't. It had opened her eyes to a harsh reality that in this world, people often did things out of fear, out of survival. Her uncle, Aaron, even Dawson, they had all been caught in a system that was bigger than them, a system that had been controlling them for years, whether they realized it or not. And now, that system had been broken. The truth had been set free, even if it was too late to undo the damage it had caused. But Claire wasn't the same person she had been when she first walked into that mansion. The fear that had gripped her, the confusion, the desperation, it was gone now. What remained was a woman who had uncovered the darkest corners of her family's history and lived to tell the tale. What remained was a woman who had the power to change everything or destroy it. As she glanced around the room one last time, she knew the mansion would never be the same. It was no longer just a home, no longer just a symbol of wealth and legacy. It was a reminder of the choices she had made, of the secrets she had uncovered, and of the people she had left behind. For a moment, it seemed like everything had been resolved. Maggie was gone. The mansion's secrets had been exposed. But as Claire turned to leave, her eyes caught something. A small, unmarked envelope sitting on the table by the door, the wax seal still intact. Her heart skipped a beat as she picked it up, her fingers trembling as she broke the seal. Inside, there was a single, folded piece of paper. The handwriting was familiar, though it had been years since she had seen it. "The truth isn't as simple as it seems. Your uncle wasn't the only one who held the key. The legacy you've uncovered is only a fragment of a much larger puzzle. Trust no one. Not even yourself." The words burned into her mind as she read them again. Not even yourself. It hit her like a slap in the face. This wasn't over. It couldn't be. Everything she had fought for, everything she had uncovered, had only scratched the surface. The true nature of the legacy wasn't a vault or a mansion, it was something far more insidious, and the real danger had only just begun. She looked at Aaron, who was still standing by the door, oblivious to the message she had just read. His face had softened, but there was still something in his eyes, a glimmer of uncertainty. Maybe he didn't fully understand what was coming, or maybe he was pretending not to. But Claire knew. She couldn't trust him. She couldn't trust anyone, not even herself. The battle for the truth, for the power her uncle had fought to protect, was far from over. And now, with the mansion in her hands, Claire had a choice to make. But what kind of choice was it? How could she decide what to do with the truth she had uncovered when even she wasn't sure what it meant anymore? As she stepped outside into the night, the world felt different. It felt colder, more distant. She had escaped the immediate danger, but the weight of what lay ahead pressed heavily on her chest. The mansion loomed behind her, dark and silent, like a sleeping giant. The storm had passed, but there was something about the stillness that felt ominous. The legacy her uncle had tried to protect, the power that had been hidden for so long, it was hers now. But was it a gift or a curse? The wind howled through the trees, the only sound breaking the silence, and as Claire glanced back one last time at the mansion, she couldn't shake the feeling that the story wasn't over. It couldn't be. Not when there were still so many questions left unanswered, so many mysteries still hidden in the shadows. And as the night swallowed her whole, Claire knew one thing for certain: the legacy wasn't just about power, it was about control. And right now, she wasn't sure who was in control anymore.